Welcome back, Wargamers, to another Age of Sigmar lore dive. We'll be taking some of the small lore entries within your Battletomes timeline, exploring the rich world of the mortal realms, and asking ourselves, why is this cool? And brainstorming a few ideas to bring this to the tabletop. Now, I've been trying hard to rotate grand alliances, right? I have Chaos with my Magotkin, Destruction with the Bone Splitters we did earlier this week, and today I'm cracking open the Legions of Nagash Battletome, hoping to get some excitement going for those undead boys and girls listening. Today's story is called Lost in the Mire, and so here it goes. The fly-blown legion pursued the Mortarch of Night, Manfred von Karstein, into the depths of the Rot-Soul Mire. As putrid Blightkings waited after the fleeing vampire, thousands of dead walkers emerged from the swamp and fell upon them. Outnumbered and surrounded, the Nurgle worshippers still had the best of the fighting until von Karstein led a vicious countercharge into the rear of their formation and wiped them out to a man. So to kick it off, I like to clear up what we do and don't know based on this story, right? Starting with the things that are unclear. I couldn't really get any info about the Fly-Blown Legion. The only other use of that title I could find is actually from the character Fecula Flyblown from Underworlds, but there's not really any clear connection there. I also tried to find any mention of the Rot-Soul Mire to understand what realm it's in, and I looked at maps from the core book and the gaming supplements. If someone else can find out where it is, I'll pin that comment as an addendum, but we don't really know where that is as far as I could tell. However, what we do know is very cool. Manfred essentially used himself as bait to lure a Magotkin army into a deadly trap, utterly surrounding them in zombie hordes. And the fighting was going well until Manfred reappeared and hits the warband in the rear flank with immense force. And so now that we have the story, let's talk about the forces at play, starting with the Legions of Nagash. The main character of this story is obviously Manfred von Karstein, Mortarch of the Night, Necromancer, and General of the Undead Gods' armies. Riding into battle upon his steed, Ashigaroth, he is utterly brutal and ruthless in combat. And Manfred is such a fascinating character to me because there's really two sides of him. Okay, there's the loyal servant of Nagash who leads the great necromancer's armies all around the realms, follows orders, and doesn't show any outward signs of deception, even though everyone knows around him that he is conniving. And then there's the actual Manfred, who is truly conniving, a brutal figure who seeks only his own gain, who would happily stab Nagash in the back if he thought he could survive it. And it might seem strange that Nagash would elevate such an untrustworthy character to the rank of Mortarch. After all, Nagash can see into his mind. He understands this duplicitous nature. But Manfred is just so useful as a tool, and he could kill the vampire with nothing more than a thought. The idea is that the rewards of having him around simply outweigh the risks. Nagash is so confident in his own power, his own control, his own might, that the idea that Manfred would ever get the upper hand in a situation does not register as a reality. And so he's like, there's no danger to it, whatever, I'll keep him around, he's really good at his job. But for Manfred's part, he is a guy who fights to win, regardless of martial honor. He isn't out looking for glory or the battle of a lifetime or one that we'll see him remembered forever. If you go to fight Manfred, he won't attack you, okay? He's going to sneak around you and obliterate your village while you're away and let the army collapse. We've all had that moment in video games where you become like an absolute unit. You can go back to the early parts of the game and beat up on low-level enemies like a breeze. That's the kind of thing that Manfred loves, right? No contest, no strength of skill or that kind of thing. Wholesale slaughter against the weak and the vulnerable. It feeds his sense of superiority, and it's highly effective to dominating large territories. Because what's an army without a home or family or supplies? This makes him a fantastic character to hate. I really like Manfred for what he brings to the table in terms of like the Mortarchs. He's different than the other ones. But we have this fantastic story of a Magotkin of Nurgle army trying to pin him down and end his reign, which, good luck, so are the Stormcast Eternals. And while the story only mentions one unit in particular for the legions, that is zombies, I can certainly see other creatures like Vargheists, direwolves, corpse carts, other lesser vampires being included in his force. He also really likes skeletons in his rules and his battalion and all that kind of stuff. All we know from this story is that Mannfred used himself as bait to lure the Blightkings into a trap. So that initial party could literally just be him, or it could be like, his honor guard running away trying to lure everybody into a trap. So there's a little bit of freedom there. Don't feel confined to be like, oh no, it literally just has to be Mannfred and 2,000 zombie models. And while there is that freedom there, I do think honestly the core of the Legions player should be zombies, right? To kind of match the story. They're called out specifically, but taking his battalion, which is the Nightfall Pack, and then everything else being zombies or zombie themed is totally fine, right? Because if you do the math, the minimum size of the battalion, if you're doing match play at the time of recording of that battalion, is 1,050 points. So yeah, just like fill up the rest of it with zombies or zombie synergy things like the corpse cart, and it goes a long way. I think it goes without saying that Mannfred's gonna be the general, but beyond that, do whatever you want. I do wish there was more support for Deadwalkers. I think that's the real meat of this narrative force, and we'll talk about the battle plan here, but I definitely have some thoughts on what I'd like to see for Deadwalkers. And now we're going to move on to the Nurgle Force, the Fly-Blown Legion. Like I said, we don't really know anything about them except their signature unit, which is Blightkings. To this end, I do suggest checking out the 2 Blightking heavy battalions for cool narrative force, representing one of the Plague God cysts out and about trying to hunt the Mortarch of Night. I just like thematic battalions and always want to include them, but you don't have to, of course. I think the real idea here is just to focus on the mortal side of Nurgle, right? You got Blightkings, Puskoil, Blight Lords, Lord of Blights, Lord of Afflictions. They're all just variations on Blightkings. It's just a Blight-King with a different mount or a different weapon, that kind of thing. So I will say there's a lot more freedom here than the Legions of Nagash army. Now, as for battle plans, there's a few ways you could go. You could find a suitable one that exists in maybe your battle tome or something like that and kind of tailor it to work with the story, or you can build your own with the open war generator. If you and your opponent agree on an existing battle plan, man, that's awesome. But I couldn't find one that it just hit me as perfect, and so I went to the mission generator. And so here's my idea for deployment from the 2018 GHB. As you can see, we have player A's territory is the 2 feet going shortways down the center, along with the opposite player being on the far edges of the table. And so the idea is player A is walking up the center and player B smashes them from the sides, almost like you're walking into a trap. And I actually had a hard time choosing a core objective for this game. I'm not the biggest fan of games where it's just run and kill. You know what I mean? There's no other kind of objective than just kill. But honestly, that's exactly what this story is. The Magkin of Nurgle just want to go kill Mannfred, and his trap involves just killing all the Magkin of Nurgle guys. And so I went to give this kind of a narrative bump to Mannfred. And so for the objectives, I chose Contest of Champions. Each player adds up the wounds characteristic of all enemy models that their army slays during battle, doubling the value for any models slain by a hero from their army. At the end of the 5th battle round, the player with the highest total wins a major victory, even if their army has been wiped out. It's a straight kill mission, but it heavily favors using your heroes to destroy units. So my intent here is that Mannfred wants to, plow into the enemy at its weakest point and just start hacking stuff. Anything he kills is worth more than the rest of the army, and I like that, right? He's this attention hog, he's greedy for recognition, but super dastardly in his tactics. Now that scenario we just put together, kind of a Blight-King heavy Magkin of Nurgle army and a Legions of Nagash army that focuses on Mannfred and zombies. If you want to do that's it. That's all you need to get gaming. But what if we wanted to take it to the next level, right? Using things like ruses and other rules from around various sources, and the Legion of Night's specific allegiance abilities, we can make this so much better. Giving the Legion of Night a ruse, for example, I would say go with Catch Them Off Guard. Use this ruse after setup is complete, but before any battle round begins. You can immediately move any of your units up to D6 inches. Roll separately for each unit. Remember, it's zombies versus Blightkings. No one in this game is like hustling. So I think getting them stuck in faster would actually really do a good job of representing like this is the trap actively being sprung, right? Because a trap's no good if it's like super slow. But I think the biggest part of the narrative kicks in with the Legion of Night's allegiance ability, Ageless Cunning. Instead of setting up a Legion of Night unit on the battlefield, you can place it to one side and say that it's set up an ambush. You can do this with up to 3 units. At the end of any of your movement phases, you can set up any of the units in ambush wholly within 6 inches of any battlefield edge, more than 9 inches from any enemy models. So imagine this, okay? The Nurgle forces are deployed first, in a line that goes across the center of the table, desperately chasing after Manfred. But he isn't on the board, they're running after him. Then the hordes of zombies show up on the left and right flanks, surging at them thanks to our ruse. Then at the end of any, but likely the first or second movement phases, Manfred comes in hot and tears into the rear flank of the enemy. I'm not saying this is the best recreation of the story, but it's one way to hit all those narrative beats that we do get from the limited information we have. Blightkings are chasing him, they get ambushed, Manfred comes in from the rear and wrecks some face. As far as balance goes on this one, it's kind of a toss-up. The Blightking army is stretched thin and across a wide area for how elite of a force it is. And the ruse may seem like a super intense buff, right? Being able to move extra is always good. But remember that the majority of those zombies won't have any real buffs, at least not massive, sweeping ones. And so they are made of paper. I think if nothing else, it could be an excellent time. It could be a lot of fun, because if you own the zombies, let me tell you, 950 points is a lot of zombies. And that's assuming you take Manfred's battalion, right? Because a straight 2k army of Manfred and zombies is an unreasonable amount of zombies. I'm going to call it a plethora of zombies. So friends, that is my personal recreation of an awesome sounding narrative tidbit. I was looking at death themed ones and I was like, I just like Manfred so much. It really stuck out to me and gave me an excuse to talk about him. And of course, it doesn't hurt that I got to sneak in my Nurgle love as well, but tell me your thoughts, friends. Are there any better rules or things that you can think of from specifically the GHBs, because I like that as like a common resource material, that you would use to make this story more in line with the lore? Like I said, we don't know what realm it is. It could be any one of them, because Manfred does travel, but let's even say it was in Shyish. That could be really stinking cool. I'd suggest making the table as swamp-like, I guess you could say, as you possibly can to make it kind of fit with everything, but that's really up to you. It's not required, and I think this could go a long way. It's one of these perfect little lore blurbs that sets up a battle plan. You know what I mean? Where it's like, we have the Nurgle forces stretched in a line and they get surrounded by zombies. How you surround them in terms of the deployment being either that straight line across, or some deployment styles are like a circle, where the Nurgle player would deploy in the center and then the zombies basically get to deploy everywhere. That's totally up to you and there's no wrong answer, but this is the one that I liked and I'd love your feedback on it. Tell me your thoughts, and if you have a small lore story from your Battletome that you would like me to cover, type in the name of it down in the comments below and I'll put it on my list to get to soon. Thank you all so much for watching and listening. I look forward to seeing you in my next Age of Sigmar lore video. Happy wargaming. Hey everybody, I hope you enjoyed that video. It was made possible by the folks over here to the left. These are my top supporters over here on YouTube and on Patreon that keep this channel going. If you'd like to learn more about how to become a supporter and get some cool things in the process, like exclusive pictures and interactions with me, and get your questions answered here on the channel, go ahead and click any of the links down below or the join button on the community page over on YouTube. Regardless of your choice, I wanted to thank you so much for joining me with this video, and I look forward to seeing you in my next one. Happy wargaming.